So today I'm going to carry on with my kind of throwback theme. I'm going back to some of the folks that I learned to tie flies from. Not from them directly, but by looking at books, reading their books, and the step-by-step instructions. This is a Mike Lawson pattern, great on western rivers. Here in the Mountain West, like to fish up in Idaho and Montana. This one here is called the No Hackle. And I will be right up front as I start this. I'm starting with some trepidation because I have struggled with this pattern. It can be a little bit tricky. So I've got a size 14 in the vise here. I'm just using some white thread, and I am going to go with an olive brown color of dubbing on this fly. And what we're going to do is we're going to start out by just making a little dubbing ball here at the back end of the fly, and I'm just going to finger dub this on. Don't need very much at all. You can see hopefully that there's very little dubbing there. We're going to take some wraps right here back at the bend of the hook, and we're going to put this little ball of dubbing here, and that's going to be used to help us split the tails that we're going to be putting on this fly. So I'm just going to build up that nice little bump there. So next I'm going to actually use a Coq de Leon feather. I've just picked one out that's kind of speckled, almost salt and pepper speckled. Coq de Leon makes a really great tail fiber. For measurement, I'm going to want this tail to be about the length of the shank of the hook, and so I'm just going to take that measure there, and I'm going to pinch right here up behind the eye, and I'll move that material backwards. We'll secure that Coq de Leon here onto our hook shank. And what we're going to do is we're going to want a bunch of, about half of this bunch. I probably have maybe 6, maybe 4 or 5 fibers of this Coq de Leon. I'm going to try to split them out, so half of them are going to go on one side of this dubbing ball. The other half are going to go on the other side of the dubbing ball. If I can just kind of barely hang on to those, and hopefully you can see that somewhat. Holding one pair of those tails on the camera side, I'm going to grab a little bunch of them that are more towards me and pull them more on the me side of this hook. And hopefully what you see when we're finished with that here is kind of that nice split tail. As I've tied a few of these up today, one of the things that I've kind of noticed a little bit, and somebody's probably going to call me on this, but to an extent this pattern looks a lot like the RS2. So we've got our tails and our dubbing ball in place. The next is going to be the most complicated portion of this pattern, and we are going to tie in a wing. And it's called a no hackle because we're going to tie in a duck quill wing, but we're not going to use any hackle. So you're going to want to get a matched pair of duck quills here. You can see I've got them. They're basically a mirror image of each other, and what you'll see is when we cut our little chunks out of here, with that mirror image, they're going to split away from one another. In terms of how much I'm going to pull off, how much I'm going to cut off, we want this to probably be pretty close to the same as the gap of my hook here. So I'll kind of just eyeball that, visually see it, and then I'm going to come and just make a cut on my quill, and I pull that off. So I've got my 2 pieces of duck quill here, and I've put them back to back, which, as you can see, they spread out a little bit there towards away from each other. And I'm going to want the wing height to be about the length of the shank of the hook. And I'm just going to, for me, I'm going to come up underneath splitting these two pieces of quill in half. And I'm going to pinch those between my thumb and forefinger, and this is the part that's challenging, and you won't be able to see it much because I've got to keep this pinched like this. I've got my thread pulled back towards me. I'm going to bring it up over the top of these quills. I'm going to loop it back around the back side of these quills, bringing it back to where I started, and then I'm going to pull it towards the front of the hook here, and then I'll pull the tension and crimp that down. I want to do a turn or two just like that, and then I'm just going to take a few tight turns to lock this in place. And in theory, you're going to end up with, you know, something that looks like that, and those are the wings. So I'm now going to just kind of sneak in here with my scissors and trim out the butt ends of these quills here. It's where it's really handy to have a rotating vise. Got one that wants me to chase it all over the place, and I'll play. Kind of got those trimmed out. I don't want to lose this positioning, so I'm going to be not pull too tight because I don't want this to spin around on me, but I do want to get my thread back onto the hook shank, and that's going to help me keep those from spinning around. So we've got our duck quills going pretty well here. You can kind of see them split. They're they've separated a little bit, and that's where I always struggle with this pattern. From here, I'm going to just move my thread backwards, so I'm going to be very gentle as I go around the base of these wings and travel my thread back towards that dubbing ball that we tied in at the very beginning, because now we're going to finish dubbing the body. I'm just going to give myself a little bit of extra thread here as I reach for my Superfine dubbing, and again we're using a brown olive color here. And grab myself a nice wispy bit of dubbing here. I'm just going to finger dub that on. One thing I like about Superfine is it just goes onto your thread incredibly tight, which also helps you keep that fly dry when you're fishing with it. So now I'm just going to, you'll see me rotating my vise a lot because I want to see when this is actually starting to move up, and I want to be very careful in how I navigate around these two quill wings here. So you'll notice I have to kind of exaggerate and bring my thread in a V shape almost backwards, back into this gap where those quills are located. I'll reach in from time to time and tighten up my dubbing a little bit. This dubbing, as I get it up here into this kind of empty space, it's going to help prop these wings up just a little bit. So I'm feeling pretty good about where I am there. So now I'm going to go ahead and take my dubbing around the front of these quills. We'll just take a few thread wraps here to build ourselves up a nice thorax. And then I'm just going to finish off with my white thread here, maybe build in a tiny little bit of a head with some thread wraps, and once I've got that done, we're going to reach over and grab our whip finisher. Let's give this a whip finish here. Use the back end of my whip finishing tool. It's got a little thread cutter. We'll disconnect from the fly. So there you've got it. We've got the nice split tails. We've got the No Hackle. We have the duck quill wings, and Really kind of a really good pattern. It fishes really well. I can't tie it very well. It fishes very well. In my eyes, it looks a little bit like an RS2. If you've tied an RS2, it's got the split tail similar to that, and kind of this poking up wing right from the thick from the body of the fly. But give it a shot.